The following is a review, dissection, and critique by Brother Dr. Ayer Ramos, past Master of Lodge, Caledonian 554, Scottish Constitution, of the book How to Respond to the Lodge, written by L. James Rongstad. This analysis depicts the sole and personal opinion of its presenter, and not necessarily represent that of his Grand Lodge, district, or even his own lodge. He speaks for himself in particular, and not for Freemasonry in general.
Introduction.
The relationship between the Church as an organization and Freemasonry as a fraternity has been historically tense. According to church writers, this antagonism between the two institutions is due primarily to theological and philosophical differences. For example, the Catholic Church has consistently opposed Freemasonry since Pope Clement XII's Papal bull In Eminenti Apostolatus, which was written more than 200 years ago, in the year 1738, just 21 years after the creation of the Grand Lodge of England in 1717, and 2 years after the formation of Grand Lodge of Scotland.
Notable papal condemnations.
Since then, at least 11 popes have made pronouncements about the incompatibility of Catholic doctrines and Freemasonry. From 1738 until 1983, Catholics who have associated with or publicly supported Masonic organizations were censured with automatic excommunication.
How this beef got started.
It all commenced when in 1736, the Inquisition, which, as you know, was a Catholic judicial procedure in which ecclesiastical judges could initiate, investigate, and try cases in their jurisdiction. Well, the Inquisition had under investigation a Masonic lodge in Florence, Italy, which was eventually condemned in June 1737. Now, this lodge had originally been founded in 1733 by the English Freemason Charles Sackville, 2nd Duke of Dorset. This lodge accepted Italian members, such as the lodge's secretary Tommaso Crudeli. Also in 1736, on 26 December, Andrew Michael Ramsay, who was, by the way, a Scottish-born writer, delivered an oration to a Masonic meeting in Paris. This took place on the eve of the election of Charles Radcliffe as Grand Master of the French Freemasons. In March 1737, he sent an edited copy to the Chief Minister, Cardinal André Hercule de Fleury, seeking his approval for its delivery to an assembly of Freemasons, as well as his approval of the craft in general. But instead, Fleury's response was to brand the Freemasons as traitors and ban their assemblies. This ban, along with the Italian investigation, led in 1738 to Pope Clement XII promulgating In Eminenti Apostolatus, the first canonical prohibition of Masonic associations.
Pope Clement XII's anti-Masonic claims.
Pope Clement XII wrote that the reasons for prohibiting Masonic associations are that members, content with a form of natural virtue, are associated with one another by oaths with grave penalties, to conceal in inviolable silence whatever they secretly do together. These associations have aroused suspicions that, to to join these associations is precisely synonymous with incurring the taint of evil and infamy, for if they were not involved in evil doing, they would never be so very averse to the light of publicity. The rumor of these doings has so grown that several governments have suppressed them as being opposed to the welfare of the kingdom. Clement XII wrote that these kinds of associations are not consistent with the provisions of either civil or canon law, since they harm both the peace of the civil state and the spiritual salvation of souls.
Pope John Paul II's Declaration on Masonic Associations, 1983.
Since 1983, excommunication is no longer automatic, but optional. This discretionary latitude came courtesy of Pope John Paul II, who declared that faithful who enroll in Masonic associations are in a state of grave sin and may not receive Holy Communion, also reiterating that membership in Masonic associations is prohibited.
About the book.
How to Respond to The Lodge was published by Concordia Publishing House, whose mission has been for over 150 years to serve and strengthen the people of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The book is aimed to provide Christians with information regarding other religions, sects, and cults in order to empower them to defend their faith in Jesus against others. How to Respond to The Lodge was initially published in 1977 and since updated several times. Its third edition was released in 2010. The foreword of this book clarifies the purpose of the same, explaining that this specialized literature serves to assist in the evangelization of persons who belong to anti-Christian sects and cults. Also, as some of the cults are very evangelistic, seeking to make converts of everyone who listens. This series also seeks to help the Christian share his faith with those who seek to evangelize him. For that reason, each of the books not only seek to compare the basic teachings of the cult with Christianity, but suggest how to witness to its members.
About the author.
Native of Minnesota, Reverend L. James Wrongstand, upon completion of high school studies, spent 5 years in the United States Navy before entering Concordia Theological Seminary in Springfield, Illinois, from which he graduated in 1958. Beyond this, there is very little publicly available information regarding the personal background and qualifications of L. James Wrongstand beyond his authorship of How to Respond to the Lodge. His primary qualification appears to stem from his research into Freemasonry from a Christian perspective rather than an academic or professional background that has been publicized. No pictures of L. James Wrongstand were found in Google search, only pictures of the several copies of this book. Perhaps the work has outshined its author.
Church, Times and Conditions, leading to 1738.
The profound dislike of the Catholic Church for Freemasonry goes beyond the story of a shared letter, the roots of their friction running deeper back in time, all the way to the 4th century, when Roman Christians set about destroying the preceding culture which had provided us classical and Hellenistic antiquity. As consequence, the Dark Ages resulted, and in just a few hundred years, only the topmost levels of the clergy could read and write, and therefore only this stratum could acquire, accumulate, and disseminate academic knowledge. The time that followed the birth of Christ have been divided by historians into three parts: ancient times, the Middle Ages, and modern times. The Middle Ages was a period characterized by obscure and turbulent semi-barbarism, the so-called Dark Ages, a time when Christianity ruled unchallenged, also known as the Media Tempestas. The Middle Ages, which include the medieval and feudal periods, lasted approximately for 1,000 years, where crime, vice, violence, drunkenness, disease, mortality, brutality, exploitation, and injustice were immeasurably worse than before or after. Yet it was during this time when the church was at its most powerful, when tall and majestic cathedrals were built, when bishops lived in palaces, and many of the male population were churchmen, like monks, priests, bishops, friars, templars, hospitallers, priors, lay brothers. The feudal order was meant to reflect heaven on earth, meaning obedience to God via one's superiors. Children obeyed their parents. Their parents were their lord's vassals and had to obey him. The lord was the king's vassal. Laymen obeyed the clergy. Monks obeyed their abbot. Clergy and laymen obeyed bishops, who themselves were feudal lords. Bishops and kings obeyed the pope, at least in theory. During this era, originality and creativity became anathema unless it had previously received a commission from the church or a lord. The church became a reborn Imperium Romanum with the Pope as its emperor. The church claims to preserve the classical tradition of antiquity, which it had actually and truly destroyed, brick by brick and book by book. The holy institution had no intention or ambition to conserve wonderful works of non-Christian authors. Some, however, were preserved almost by accident, while many ancient titles were burnt to ashes and smoke. It was only as men rediscovered lost techniques and designed new ones that eventually the Media Tempestas gave way to the Reformation and the Renaissance. The discovery of printing proved to be a major factor in this transition. During the Dark Ages, the only schools were Christian schools. World-famous academies founded by philosophers as prominent as Plato were closed by Christians. Almost 1,000 years of educational excellence just shut for the satisfaction of dogma, convinced that ignorance was godliness and writing was necessary only to propagate the holy books. All that is known about the Media Tempestas, apart from archaeological evidence, arrived to us through the medieval clergy. They, however, were not interested to give us comprehensive accounts of the beliefs and superstitions of the vulgus, but they did let us infer it from their frequent denouncements and the evolution of church practice to accommodate it. Unfortunately, culture and society are usually more interested in the growth of the new, even if misunderstood, than in the decline of the old, despite of its contribution. During the Dark Ages, the rules, laws, and social structures were set in stone, relying on the kings and queens to make all decisions and declare rights for them, even if they were completely unfair. Before the advent of the Enlightenment period, sometimes called the Age of Reason, the church ruled everything. Church and state were linked together. Anything written or told had to be approved by the church leaders, or it would be branded sinful. People were only concerned about survival, not intellectual pursuits. However, the Enlightenment period brought an open opposition to the supremacy of religion. This led to revolt against and disagreement with the ways of the king and pope. People, motivated by the precepts of the age of reason, challenged the traditional social and political structures of society, eventually leading to the ideals of human rights and improvement in the lifestyle for everyone, as well as a fairer and more inclusive society for all. Since the rise of speculative Freemasonry, it became a determined protector and consummated keeper of the previously stated principles, as well as a stern promoter of tenets like liberty, equality, and fraternity. The Church as institution has never forgotten or even forgiven the craft for its stand to promote libertas humanitatis et ius cogitandi, and until today's day has relentlessly and ceaselessly condemned it. However, it is often said that two are needed to tango. Hence, not all the blame can be cast on the Holy Church. Many irregular and clandestine so-called Freemasons writers have been at fault for their incendiary and controversial comments, and perhaps also at fault is regular Freemasonry for falling short to emphatically and unequivocally reject these confusing and appalling comments, which have done much to cast aversion, disrepute, and doubt over our honorable and noble institution. Now it is time to commence with our comprehensive review, detailed dissection, and honest critique of the book, How to Respond to the Lodge.
Next, Chapter 1. History of the Lodge.